and welcome to our webinar today. On behalf of those of the rest of us here on Clear Insight who are on the call, we are glad to have each one who's joined us today to hear all about the latest version of Cognos TM1, Cognos TM1 10.2. And so we're glad to have each of you online, and a number actually on this webinar from different parts of the world. So welcome to folks who are joining in from outside North America as well. We're glad to have each one who has joined for our call. So just as we move along here, the agenda for the webinar today, we're going to just do a little bit of an introduction again, and then as we like to do, and as I like to do as well when I'm on webinars on your side of the table, to answer some surveys, get you engaged, and it's helpful for each person on the call to understand who the rest of the audience is on the call, and for us as we work our way through the presentation to make sure we're targeting certain points to the audience that we have. Of course, as we do the surveys, it's completely anonymous, so no worries about that as you answer the surveys. Then we will move into the meat of the webinar and cover a couple of well, more than a couple of key points about 10.2.2 that we feel you need to know and to understand to determine whether there's value for your environment, and then of course how to use them. We're happy to talk to each of you afterwards and help you get the most out of your TM1 solution. And then we will wrap up with Q&A as well. And as we mentioned Q&A, a reminder to everyone on the call, we look forward to your questions as we go through it. So you should see on the right side of your screen the chat window. Please put your questions into the chat as soon as you think of them as we work our way through. Some may be answered as we are working our way through, but for the most part we'll handle them at the end. We'll read them out and then answer the Q&A for that. And again, your questions are anonymous if you prefer that, and we look forward to answering your questions. So please get in on the chat and answer questions as we go along. Your host today, myself, Ian Margerison, responsible for business development. Your main host for today is Bob Gill, who's on the line from Vancouver, and Bob is our lead solution architect, and he will be taking you through the meat of the presentation and walking you through TM1. So we appreciate Bob taking time out from all of his projects to help us on the webinar today. Also on the line we have Kit Chan, our services leader, and Susan Malik, our president. And Susan is my partner in crime to help as we go through the polls and the Q&A. And so that's who's on the webinar with us today. So for those of you who may not know too much about us, we are Clear Insight FPM, and so we are an advanced IBM business partner, and we specialize to the Office of Finance. We support clients for the most part across North America, a little bit beyond the borders of North America, with budgeting, planning, forecasting, which of course is why TM1 is in the sweet spot of our forte, financial reporting and disclosure management with Cognos Disclosure Management, and then of course business intelligence with the Cognos suite of solutions. We are also completely Microsoft certified and approved, and quite a number of other components that we could mention. Another key thing related to each of you on the web is we are unique business partner supplier to the North American marketplace for Cube Docs. And Cube Docs is a model management and automatic document management solution specifically for TM1. And for all of you using TM1, Cube Docs is a fantastic solution that is quite cost effective and can be used to document and model your TM1 solutions. And I think Bob's going to touch on that just near the end as well. We support a wide variety of clients from all different verticals, many of who are on the call today with us, and we're glad to have our clients on. And for those of you who are guests, we're happy to have you as well. Okay, so our first quick poll is it's helpful to understand, of course, there's TM1, but TM1 is a component also of Express, Cognos Enterprise, and and you can leverage TM1 for Cognos Disclosure Management. So Susan has opened up the poll there. If you could each take a quick second and answer the poll with what solutions, how you're using TM1. Is it just in TM1 on its own, or do you have the other solutions as well? Pick all that apply, so we'll be looking for everybody to just kind of kick in there on each of those. Just give you another couple of seconds. We're waiting for a few more votes coming in there. Please click all that applies. And okay, Susan, you could close up that poll then. And as you can see, we like to show you what the poll results are. As we would expect, for the most part, you are specifically using the TM1 interface against the TM1 cubes. Some of you on Enterprise and Express, and some of you are on Other. So interested in that and what your thoughts are with that, unless it's the Cognos Business Intelligence solution. Okay, if we can go back to our slides now then. And our next poll question, so most are using TM1, and again, pick all that will apply, and Susan's opening it up for us there. You are using it, no doubt, for budgeting and forecasting. Are you using it for consolidations, reporting, or business intelligence and dashboards? So just get your points in there. Just over 50% have voted. We'll give you another couple of seconds. All right, very good. Thanks, Susan. You can close that up. And again, as we would expect, the majority on budgeting and forecasting, of course, which TM1 is specifically designed to do. Consolidations. Good to see that some of you are using it for consolidations, and some of you may not be aware of the power in which we can create consolidation solutions with TM1 for you, and can be very efficient in helping you with that. So that's something we can do. The reporting, of course. Business intelligence and dashboards. For those of you who would like to be doing that and maybe are not, this webinar will be very good for you. You will see that 10.2 has brought in some tremendous enhancements to support some of the BI and dashboard capability right inherently within TM1. So wonderful, thanks for that. And then one last quick poll as we come online. We're interested to understand what level of user you are in TM1, or what type of user. Are you a new user, are you an experienced user, or are you responsible for supporting the back end of the solution? Are you more on the implementers, the IT side? And this is just pick one answer. So some of you might be crossing multiple vectors. Just pick the one that to you is most relevant. Another couple of seconds. All right, terrific. Thank you, Susan. And this surprised me, actually. I would have thought that our folks on the call, the majority of you would have been classified probably in the experienced user section. So there's a lot of folks on the back end, so that will probably make Bob's job a little easier. He can talk tech, but certainly as we go through that, for any of you who are new or experienced, if you've got questions that things didn't make sense, put them into the chat and we'll answer them as we go along. So thank you for your input on those. That's great and helpful to everybody on the call. All right. So just before I turn it over to Bob, I thought I would give you just a little bit about Cognos TM1 at a glance. We're talking, of course, about the latest release of Cognos TM1 10.2.2. And so this was released, some of you may not be aware, it was released in mid-May. So it has been on the market or available to Cognos clients for about 2 months now. A number have upgraded, but it it takes time for folks to get on. So if you thought, oh wow, it's on for 2 months, you're not behind the 8 ball at all. It's a good time to come on board with it, and this is why we decided to host this webinar at this point in time. You might say 10.2.2 and say, well, what happened? I missed 10.2.1. Well, because 10.2.0 was released in March, but there was no 10.2.1. So don't worry, you didn't miss 10.2.1. IBM skipped 10.2.1. Maybe they thought the 10.2.2 was so exciting it was worth skipping a release. Maybe that's the case. But more than likely, they didn't want to have confusion with Cognos Express, which was labeled 10.2.1, which actually has TM1 10.2.0, just to make things a little more complicated within that Cognos Express version. Cognos Disclosure Management went to 10.2.2, and now it's at 10.2.3. So there might have been some attempt to bring things in line with the other versions. So just to let you know, it jumped from 10.2.0.1 in March up to 10.2.2, no 10.2.1, and so that's where we're at right now, released in May. And just this little, I thought I would bring in this little image from the IBM site. That 10.2.2 supports the Microsoft Excel capabilities within it from 2007 through to 2013, and also Explorer versions 9, 10, and 11 are supported within 10.2.2. So I thought that was an extra little tidbit to bring forward for you. So now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Bob for the meat of the presentation, and he's going to give you the details of really what the specifics are and what you need to know as you go through, and a reminder just to make sure you're putting your questions into the chat as we go through. Thanks so much, and I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
Great, thanks, Ian. So there's a lot. I'm going to go back a few slides. Sorry for jumping around here, but I want to just kind of revisit this title slide here. There's actually a lot that's happened in different releases of TM1 10. You can see there's different features we could talk about, and there's a fair bit that's already in 10.2.2. So what we're going to focus on today is kind of giving you some of the what I feel are some of the big features, just kind of talking through those ones so you know that they're out there. And then the one feature I think we've chosen to focus on with a demo here is going to be Cafe. So that's the Cognos Analysis for Excel tool, and it's been around in some form or another for a couple of versions, but they've done some neat updates to it now. So that one we'll do a demo of. So let's go back to now one of the features I really like in this new version of scorecarding. So on the right hand side of the screen now, you'll see that there's just a sample of what a scorecard could look like. Now, scorecards have been around a long time. TM1 hasn't necessarily had native support for scorecarding, so that's the new piece of it. And they've done it in an interesting way where there's actually new cube types. So you have a metrics cube, you have a scorecard cube, and you have strategy maps. So for folks that may not be familiar with those pieces, a metrics cube really just gives us finite numbers that measure against our how do I say it? Yeah, it's just numbers that we can graph on a chart here. And similar to the scorecards, the scorecard piece will just add in status and trends. So on the bottom part of this screenshot here, you'll see there's a status and trend column, and it's actually displaying images right in line with our grid. So that's the native functionality, and that's how the native functionality is baked into it now, where you can identify what the status should be. If a number is between certain thresholds, it's green, yellow, red, or green circle, green arrow would be for trends. But the scorecard type of cube gives us a lot of that functionality for free. We don't need to add in any kind of rules or TI processes to be updating stuff to give us that output. And similarly for strategy maps. So a strategy map is really a lot of these things linked. So sometimes if you look at a KPI for, let's say, sales. So sales may be made up of, well, how big is your sales pipeline? How many people do you have out in the, in the market, working the market, trying to generate those sales? All those different inputs to a particular higher level metric. That's how that brings in the idea of a strategy map. So you can take 2 or 3 different things that may be leading indicators that will help you figure out what a future one would be. And those relationships between those KPIs are handled all within the strategy map already. Now Cafe, I'll go into more detail with the demo at the end after we go through some of these features, but at a high level, Cafe is really everything in TM1 within Excel. Now I know folks are probably thinking, well, I can already do everything in Excel with perspectives or Accelerator, but stuff like charting and graphing and special formulas, special formatting hasn't always been as flexible as it could be. Cafe has more of a, it's a more tailored, more print-ready version of that kind of connectivity. So for folks that are looking for something that's pixel perfect, Cafe is a good solution for those kind of solutions. Now another new feature, this is new in 10, and I've been making updates to it through the minor versions of up to 10.2.2 now, Operations Console. So TM1 itself is a very memory-intensive application, and performance can be a challenge with it under different circumstances. So it's been more of an art than a science to see, okay, if a certain TM1 solution is running slowly, why is it running slowly? Or if you get into a busy period, it's the last day before everyone's budget is due and everyone's in the system hammering it away and the thing grinds to a halt. Well, what's causing that? Is it a memory challenge? Is it a disk challenge? Is it because some users are coming from a different area? It's a network challenge. So this Operations Console tool, not only does it give us visibility into those different pieces of what could be causing any performance challenges or observations, but it gives us something that's actionable. So if we see that, well, memory is our challenge, well, maybe we want to bump up our memory. If we see that there's certain memory for feeders or memory for calculations, then that tells us maybe if we tune a few things specific to those, memory or calculations or rules or even some of our input data, maybe we archive some data. This Operations Console view gives us that actionable information to really improve performance across the system. Furthermore, because it gives us this visibility, it actually includes alerts. So let's say that we're monitoring memory on our system and we realize we get an alert saying, in our production environment, memory's maxed out right now. So just as you may have with other production support solutions, you can get a proactive notification to say, oh, our memory on the production server is maxed out right now. The user may be seeing poor performance. We should do something. So it doesn't wait for a user to complain and say, hey, something's not right. The IT group or whoever's managing the servers, they get notified right away when these things are happening. And then the very next step to that is, well, what should we do? And there's a lot of opportunity to make changes here. I mean, you can take certain cubes offline. You can get an idea of, is it one particular user who is causing, maybe there's a long-running query that we can stop or we can account for. But the Operations Console itself provides the visibility to see what resources are being taxed and also the alerts to get proactive notification on what these things are, what's happening in the system. And Performance Modeler. Now, Performance Modeler, for those who might not know, it's a Java-based tool where you can edit turbo integrator processes as well as cubes, dimensions, and really anything to do with TM1. In prior versions, you probably use Architect or you'd use the rules editor and different pieces, but now they've kind of brought those different disparate tools together into Performance Modeler. And they've made some, Performance Modeler itself has been around since the first release of TM1 10, but for early adopters that may have used it, they may have seen kind of some performance challenges with it. It takes 5 seconds or more to save some TIs, but now they've gotten over the hump of a new product here where it's very fast performance. You save TIs saved very quickly. It's got IntelliSense, so if you're coding something and you're not quite sure what the parameters are to a particular function, you get that nice IntelliSense drop down. These are the parameters for that function. And even within the dimension, you can see these are the elements I can choose from that dimension. So that's quite handy. And I'll go into a little more detail on these performance modeler pieces, but just as a high level, these are all within performance modeler now. So the performance enhancements, the cube calculation expressions, which is new, links, feeders, and data flow diagrams. So let's look at now these next couple slides just to make sure everyone's got the right reference here. This is all within performance modeler. So with cube calculation expressions, you may see, if you're familiar with these, with writing calculations, you'll see that it's more English style expression now. It's not necessarily OLAP or strict code definition. It's much more VB script like, and that's on purpose because they not only do they want to make them more readable, they also want to make them have a nice GUI on top of it, so you can kind of drag and drop different pieces into it and make it easier to use. So this is just a quick screenshot of what this new editor looks like, and you can see you can drag different pieces from a dimension. You have all your dimensions listed along the left. You have your expression. That can be all leaf level expression, a consolidated level expression, or string expression along the right-hand side. And when you do write these things, they're written in more of an English style syntax than something more cryptic. Feeders. So a common performance challenge that folks run into is you've got a solution out there, it's working fine, and over time it gets a little bit slow, or certain actions get a little slow. And it could be a lot of reasons. A lot of the time it's feeders that need to be tuned. And feeders can be a difficult one to analyze because it's been more of an art than anything in the past. What is the smartest way to set up a feeder so that it's only updating the optimal set? You don't want it to update everything across different cubes because then that ends up taking too much time and too many resources. So two pieces that have helped feeders in TM110 is the idea of links, and also the generation and analysis of feeders. So rather than asking folks to code a rule and code a feeder in some kind in TM1 syntax and kind of figure that all on their own, within Performance Modeler you can create a link, and a link will show you on the left. On one side it'll show what's your source, and on the right side it'll show your target, and you just literally link the two, and it will automatically generate the rule for what's being calculated and a feeder for where it's coming from. Now, given that it's trying to do things automatically, you can guess it's not going to be perfect. So to make things even better, we also have two new features where we can generate feeders if we choose to, and also generate a report of the analysis. So now we can generate feeders from within Performance Modeler. We can also run our analysis report to suggest feeders before writing any feeders. So this is a huge performance tool because many performance challenges are related to inefficient rule feeder combinations. So let's say you've got a fairly large cube or set of cubes, and you're wondering, okay, well I need to have a new calculation for my revenue. It's going to be my unit price times my unit sold from one cube, and it's going to feed into another one. So what's the right feeder for that? It can be a difficult question to answer. Before we're even writing that feeder, this report here will help us understand what are some suggestions for that. And data flow diagrams is another new feature in TM110. So now I mentioned this one kind of hesitantly because I think data flow diagrams is definitely a nice feature, but it doesn't have the same robustness of something like Cube Docs. So at this point, I'll show a little bit of Cube Docs later on when we get to the demo portion, but I just want to showcase that there is data flow diagrams here now in TM1 10, but it's not at the level that for real production support and risk to be conscious of, folks that are conscious of risk, something like Cubedog will manage that risk much more effectively. Upgrading gotchas. So this is a little bit more on the technical side. So if we're changing a subnum, now subnum is a function used in TM1 where you can select from a set. So maybe you're selecting a particular event within a season, or you're selecting a particular account within a set of accounts. Before, you'd have to say, if you're using a web sheet of some kind, you'd have to say the automatic calculation is on. And anytime you change a number, it may take a second or two for everything on the sheet to recalculate. They've changed that now. So on the one side, it helps because you don't have to have the whole sheet on automatic calculation. But when you change the selection in a subnum, it will recalculate. It forces a recalculation. It's a good feature, but for some things, people need to be conscious of that because there's been common workarounds for that in previous versions. So if you have a common workaround for doing an auto calculation, you might want to revisit that and see, well, now is it an opportunity to turn the automatic calculation on the worksheet off and just let the subnum force that. Also, hidden DBA and DBS functions are not I want to say they're not working, but there's a couple of issues with those so far, and I expect them to be fixed in future versions. It's just something to be aware of right now. So if you're doing any kind of pulling properties or setting properties within hidden cells within a web sheet, they might not fire after a certain user action. So that's just something to be aware of. And as always, just do a test migration to uncover any possible issues. And I encourage folks to submit PMRs for issues that they uncover, so that not only do they you'll help yourself get a fix for a possible issue, but also help the community, so that as we uncover issues, it's a more stable product for everyone. Now, it's a very geeky topic, but this is probably the one topic that I'm most excited about in TM1 10.2.2 is the multi-threaded queries. I'll just read you the slide here. Have you ever noticed that large queries take so long to complete and don't really use the CPU power in TM1? Previously, TM1 queries were single-threaded. This has finally been remedied now. If a query can be parallelized, it can use as many cores as you want it to. So a lot of folks in production environments have 16, 32 cores, CPUs with tons and tons of memory and a lot of resources available. When you get that one query that someone's created that's going to pull back the entire contents of the largest cube on the server, it tends to slow things down, and that query itself will just take forever to run. So that's an unfortunate side effect of not being multi-threaded. Now that it is, you can get a lot more performance out of those additional resources. So for folks that may be running into performance challenges, if they have a couple of long-running queries, or maybe it could be even a TI process that's generating a large data set that it works with, those particular items could see big performance improvements just because those queries are now being multi-threaded. So again, I mentioned there's a lot of stuff in 10.2.2 to talk about. I'm just going to mention just a few more things and we'll get into the demo portion. So TM1 on the cloud, for folks that want the cloud offering, let us know we can connect you with the right people. So if you don't want to have TM1 hosted within your environment, but you want to use the tool, there's options for having it on the cloud now. For dimension calculations. So if you have an account dimension that maybe you're using in 10 different cubes, rather than putting the same rule in every single cube, you can actually create dimension calculations so that they'll sit in the dimension and be used automatically wherever that dimension is used. That's a powerful feature, particularly for folks who are doing some kind of financial analysis. Mobile contribution. So for contributor apps that are out there, that's a very common use of TM1 pieces where you ask folks, maybe in manufacturing settings or really any vertical, they're going to be entering just simple numbers at for their piece of the solution, and it all rolls up quite nicely. and you don't want to have submission and approval chains. That can all be done from tablets now. So for folks that it would be easier if someone was walking around an office or a facility with a tablet rather than a laptop or tied to a particular workstation, that might be a good fit for those kind of solutions. And Java Web, yeah. So the TM1 client has been rewritten in Java. It's much faster now and provides a more clean interface. And there's no need to redraw the screen after saves or rebuilds. So folks may have found that's a slight annoyance when you're working in TM1 Web, and if you just go to save your data or you change a subnum, change a filter, then the whole screen redraws. It's from a static perspective, it's kind of annoying. So they've gotten rid of a lot of that. Also, by moving to Java, I think they're going to see some performance improvements, and I think it'll be easier to extend as well. So, and then also the 64-bit TM1 perspectives for folks that have been asking for that. That's available now. And the piece about extension, now that it's moved to Java, there's a full TM1 REST API, and you can make Java extensions for your Turbo Integrator processes. This is one of those features that it's there, and it's not promoted all that much right now because I think they want to come up with a few kind of killer apps before they start promoting this piece. But I see this as being a big extension for anyone that wants to have a little more control over what's going on within TM1. Then this is quite powerful. Cube Docs. So for folks that have never heard of Cube Docs, Cube Docs is, I think as Ian mentioned there, it's a TM1 documentation tool that does all the documentation automatically. We've seen a lot of success with it with clients that they have an automated process that runs on their server periodically, automatically documenting their solutions in each environment. Now, recently, within the last 6 months, an update has come out for a new version where it handles change management now. So if you're ever wondering, how do I know what to promote, what's changed, and how do I validate two environments are in sync? So with Cube Docs, you can do version comparison of your documentation, and it'll tell you exactly what's different between two environments from a structural perspective. And that can be very handy just to give you that peace of mind that, yep, the promotion was done successfully, everything's in sync, or maybe you missed something. Or on the other part of it, maybe we've been making changes in dev and aren't we sure what do we need to promote. So now I'm going to flip over to demo. I want to show you what this looks like. So for folks that maybe have never used the IBM site, I was going to show you quickly. If you're on the IBM.com and you're logged in, go to Downloads, Fixes and Updates and Drivers. The next screen that's going to come up is going to ask you for what product you want to download. So I just type in Cognos Analysis, just using Cognos A. Now I see these. I've had it doing recent, but it's also showing up in my all products. So I select that product. I can select which version I want, what operating system I'm working with, and then now it'll show me the support portal for that particular piece. And then the first link on the left, the downloads link, will take me right to where I want to download this thing from. I select I want, say, actually 64-bit. And then, so this is all, as long as you're permissioned for it. As long as you're permissioned for it, you'll see the downloads for that. And you can download that one. So I'm going to flip over to Excel now, and let's take a look at this. So here we are in Excel. For Cognos Analysis for Excel, there is an Excel add-in here. So you'll see this one's here. Now, once you download and install it, you just need to make sure that when you go into your options screen and you see your add-ins, you'll need to make sure that you see this one in here. You may need to come in and manage add-ins and make sure that's selected, and you may need to browse for it. But once you see that in there, then you'll see this ribbon along the top. So for me, I have the ribbon. I can click on IBM Cognos. It's going to take a moment to come up, and once it does, I'll be able to connect into my TM1 servers. So, and then depending on what I'm logging into, I will be prompted for my credentials. Oh, wrong server here, sorry. So I can connect to different servers, that's fine. So I have a list of the servers that I have available. Once I'm browsing through the server, I can see now they're called packages. These reference really to the cubes that are going to be on that server. Let's say I pick one particular one. Where's my forecast? Revenue one. Revenue. So pick my revenue one. I know I'm getting within Excel now. I can get a list of all my views. Within the views, I can see what's showing up in my columns versus the rows versus the titles. So it's a nice navigation of the true TM1 objects are sitting on the server. I can see my private views as well if I have any. I can also see my processes. So as long as I'm permissioned to see these things on the server, I can run or edit parameters of a process right from within Excel here. And if I want to take a particular view, it's simple drag and drop. So I take my view, I drag it into a particular cell. That's going to go and pull that view for me, and here I go. So I see my title dimensions along the top here. I can see my row dimensions and my column dimensions. Now there's the idea of a flex view here, which I think is kind of neat. Click on that. I see some options here. Most of it's just connecting, which is not such a big deal. But use type and refresh. I think this one's pretty slick, so I try to have that on. And what that means is if I want to type something, let's see total company. Maybe I forgot. Well, what other companies are here? So I have my organization dimension right here. I can navigate that dimension. There's total company. What makes that up? Well, there we go. I can see, well, Georgia. So maybe I want to change this to Georgia. So I change that to Georgia. Just by changing that one cell, the data automatically refreshed. So there's no DBRWs here or particular functions. A lot of that's hidden away Cafe hides that behind the scenes. All we need to know is that we make our selections along here. We have our rows that we want to see, and then we see our columns along here. And there's no limit to the number of these that we can add into one particular screen. So let's say I also want to add in maybe something from a different cube. So I go back into my browser. For some reason, let's say I want to pick Asset Life. So I've got my Asset Life cube. I'll take the default view of that one. I'm just going to drag that down here. There we go. I can look at my asset life for different assets. And I can move this around wherever I want to. We're all within Excel. It comes with some nice formatting by default. And I don't need to leave Excel to do this analysis. I really don't even need to know much about what rules or feeders or what's going on on the TM1 side. It's just all within Excel. So I'm just going to check my notes here for a moment. Yeah, so we talked about that. Good. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left. So what I want to show before we go into the Q&As, I just want to show Cube Docs quickly. Because I know I mentioned that, but I haven't shown you that just yet. I'm having a challenge changing over here. Sorry, I think I'm having some technical difficulties here, so I'm not going to be able to show you Cube Docs right now. What I can tell you about Cube Docs is that they're, maybe I have a screenshot. Okay. Hey Ian, let's do the Q&A now. I'm going to see if I can bring my Cube Docs screen back up, but then while I'm doing that, let's go start doing the Q&A.
All right, very good, Bob. Then let me just pop down to here. And so where we are right now then, there was one more audience poll that we'll do just before we start the Q&A, and Bob did some extensive demoing for you of Cafe, which was great to see that and what we could do with that. Just wanted to open up this poll, and you can open it up, Susan, to ask you which topics would you like to see more in a future webinar, because we wanted to kind of watch your time here. We could be demoing more of scorecarding, we could be demoing more of multi-threaded queries, etc. So Susan, if you're able to open up that last poll. I'm not sure if people see that. Do I see that? I don't see that. Oh, there it is. Okay. Very good. So it's in progress. We're just waiting for a couple people to complete that. Okay, let's open it up. And I'm not seeing it on my screen, but hopefully you're seeing it on your screen there. Looks like most of the people are looking for performance modeler, and that would make sense given the audience that we have here, that most of you are involved in the back-end side of things. The operations console is quite extensive to see as well. So those are things we will take into account on our next webinar, and we'll look at bringing you some demos along those lines, and feel free to recommend other things when you complete the webinar. So with that, we will go to Q&A, and then we will turn it back to Bob if he has Cube Docs there, and we can show you Cube Docs at the end. So Susan, is there some questions that have come in?
Yes, there is. The first question is Cafe needed for Operations Console?
Good question. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I can answer that. Cafe is not needed for Operations Console, although Operations Console in itself is not set up when you install TM1. You got to do a couple of adjustments in the configuration files when you after you install TM1 to get it working. But it does not need Cafe. Cafe is a fully add-in for Excel.
Thank you. The second question is, what version did multi-threading begin in?
Good question. I'd have to look that up. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I know it was one of the 10 version, TM1 10 versions. I suspect it's actually TM1 10.2,
yeah,
but I could be wrong.
Yeah, they made some multi-threading changes in 10.2, but they didn't. I think it was like a hidden feature that you could do. They didn't really advertise it until 10.2.2.
Well, we can certainly get back to this individual with the exact answer to that question. Kit, did you have any other questions that perhaps came?
Yeah, I have a question that was sent to first, I'd like to know who can use cube calculations, users or developers only?
That's a good question. So it is something that you can only access through Performance Modeler. So it's really depending on who you get access, who can use Performance Modeler. I think that probably the concern for the question is that you don't really want and a lot of end users being able to make changes to dimension calculations because it have disastrous effects. So it is the kind of thing you wouldn't want everyone in there making cube calculations. But anyone that can use Performance Modeler can make that.
Okay, great.
Okay, and another question is, do old web forms from TM1 older than 10 need to be updated with the new Excel integration?
Okay, so I can answer that one. The answer to that is it depends how old it is. So if you're upgrading from a pre-10, most of your old web sheets do not need any sort of conversion, although depending on how old you go, the newer versions in 10.2 uses like I think the Open XML Excel format, so it has to be in the .xlsx extension. So if you develop all your web sheets and then older version of Excel, you can actually after you upload it, you need to right-click on it and do the conversion in order for it to work in 10.2, because they replace really the whole backend. In 10.2 is when they first replaced the IIS with Apache Tomcat, so now it's fully Java integrated. And the reason why it depends is because they also made some changes in 10.2.2. Now with Cafe, at this moment in time, you cannot create a form in Cafe using Cafe-only commands and make that into a web sheet. Currently, Cafe supports about 6 perspective functions. Those include the sub-NM, DBR, DBRW, really the major functions that you can use in perspective. We attended the Vision conference in Orlando back in May, and we did have a good session with a couple of the IBM product managers for Cafe. And even though it only supports about 6 perspective functions right now, and there's no ability for it to create web sheets from pure Cafe commands, they are actually looking at doing that, and that is something that IBM is looking at doing. So in future releases of Cafe, they will have more support, more backwards compatibility to some of the perspective functions. Right now, you can really have both loaded up, so you can use perspectives and Cafe in the same way, but you just got to be careful when you're if you're going to do that, because when you create a web sheet, make sure that you only do it with the perspective functions and not integrate any of the Cafe stuff.
All right. Is there any more questions, or is that all the questions now, Susan?
That would be all the questions for now.
All right, terrific. Well, thanks for bringing those questions online. We have 1 or 2 minutes, couple minutes left. I'm not sure, Bob. Do you have Cube Docs raring to go? Or not? Not quite.
Not
I can do
quite.
it. I can do it. Yeah, just give me 1 second here, and I can do the demo there.
All right.
You guys want? Ian, would you like? Can you give me control, please?
Yeah, I will change you to presenter, Kit.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you a little bit of Cube Docs and what it looks like. So the Cube Docs interface is very simple. right up here, you define your connection, you specify your output, really you hit generate, and it goes. So I'm going to show you what an output looks like from Cubedog. Now this is Cube Docs version 2.0. I believe that their latest version is, I believe, 2.5, which actually supports the cloud offering that IBM has for TM1. So what it does, it actually creates a HTML document for you. I'm going to maximize this, and I'm going to increase my font size to help you see it better. There we go. So you see here, what Cubedog does, it generates an HTML document that really navigates through your model and it documents what you have. See here, it's got a nice little left toolbar that it looks a lot like Architect. By clicking on any of the nodes on the tree, it tells you what you have. So each one of these are dynamic. So by clicking on any of these hyperlink, you'll drill down into more detail about what that is. So right now I've clicked into the a revenue cube, and right away for the cube you can see what it has. So here are the dimensions as part of the cube. Summary flow, so it recognizes TI processes, and also does cube rules, right? So again, within my cube, I've created some rules, right? So by following standard Cubedog documentation format, you can see that it picks that up, and you see who created the rule, when was last edited. Right? So it gives you a nice formatted output, HTML. You can also look at it from an unformatted perspective. I click unformatted. Here's something that we're probably all used to seeing directly in the rules editor in Architect. Right. And for example, I can also drill into a turbo integrator process. So let's look at this one, copy revenue compare units. I click on that again. It shows me the components of my TI process. Right. Details of each section. Right. Yeah, so it's quite useful in that manner. So I'm going back up one level. So so I'm going to navigate down to a different part of the tree. So here you can see under model documentation, the overall view of the model. Like so here's a textual view, right? So I can see details of every cube. So I know before we were looking at the revenue cube. So if I click on them again, so I can drill through here. And within each dimension, I can also look at directly from each dimension here, channel. Okay. I can also look at each process directly. If I know exactly what I'm looking for, I'll just show you linked processes as well as here in your data flow. If I go back up top on my financial planning, you see this is how everything is linked, right? So here's my financial planning. Right, so there, I'm going to show you some here. Here's a model overview diagram. As you can see, this is very similar to the new feature in TM1 10.2, although it gives you a lot more capabilities in terms of documenting what you have. So you can see how this is beneficial to your organization in terms of understanding what you have, because you may have some staff turnover, or even just some older models that you've come back to it months later and you might have forgotten. So this is a good way of having it there. Unfortunately, I may be able to show this one right now, but this version will also let you do version comparisons.
Yeah, thank you for showing that, Kit. I think what I wanted to show with this piece here is that data flow diagram piece at the top. So one of the new features in 10.2.2 is a data flow diagram, but it doesn't have anywhere near the amount of detail that the diagrams here in Cube Docs do. So from these diagrams, as Kit's saying, you can navigate through to different levels. You can go to the application level, the model, the cube, the dimension, and the change control piece is quite valuable, because then you can get the feeling of comfort of what stuff do you need to deploy before deployment. Once it's done, is everything in sync? And if there's different copies out there, you can surface those different variances very quickly, automatically.
I think that's it.
Okay,
Ian, I think,
well, I'm just
we're
watching
kind of
the time. Yeah, I was just watching the time. Thanks for jumping in on that, Kit, and showing Cube Docs. Just before we close out, was there any other questions, Susan, that might have popped in since we started the Cube Docs?
Yeah, I think there's one question is, which TM1 version works with Cube Docs?
Okay. You want to take that, Bob?
Sure. So Cube Docs is compatible all the way back to it's 9.5.1, I believe, maybe 9.5.0, and it is up to date. Not only is it goes right up to 10.2.2, and it includes cloud support, as Kit was saying there. So whether you're on maybe an older version or you're right up to date on the new stuff, Cube Docs can document your solution automatically.
All right, good, thanks. So we've come to the end of our hour. Thank you very much, everybody, for jumping on board, and we're glad to have you again. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time if you'd like to understand more about 10.2.2, any help you might want with thinking about upgrading to 10.2.2, and of course with Cube Docs and anything else around TM1 and Cognos. We look forward to connecting with you and helping you. Please feel free to reach out at info@clearinsight.ca. There's a phone number to reach us as well, and all the other social ways to meet us. So once again, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day, depending on what time zone you're in, and we look forward to having you online with us the next time we run a webinar around Cognos. Thanks so much, and bye for now.